Welcome to One Way to Machines and the 8th Gen Honda Civic series. We are now looking inside of the passenger front wheel well. Raise the car up by your preferred jacking method and put the car on jack stands. I have removed the caliper for filming purposes. You do not need to remove the caliper off of the brake disc for this job. Our next step is going to be removing this access plastic panel here by removing 2 plastic pop rivets. There you go, plastic garbage. Once you remove these 2, there's enough flex in the plastic cover that you can just tilt this down slightly and place it underneath the lower control arm. The AC compressor is just further up, so right here where you see my finger pointing is one of the faces of the AC compressor. So you're going to be working inside of here. Next, you want to remove 3 Phillips screws holding the mud flap in, which holds the fender liner in, and then go across the whole fender liner and remove all of the plastic rivets and remove the fender liner completely, as you're going to want the space in order to be able to work well on the AC compressor in here. Store your fender liner plastic rivets strategically as they're different sizes. Here we have the 3 Phillips screws that came out with the mud flap, and as you can see, the ones that go on the inside of the fender are much longer than the ones that go on the top. Those are smaller ones. This car is on not on its last legs, but it's very old. It almost has 300,000 kilometers, and these plastic components have been removed many times. So you might have better luck with them on your car, but the best way to do this is to try to get screwdrivers underneath the soft plastic part, because they're 2 pieces, and remove this part first, and then use a trim tool to get the second body portion out once you've removed this one at least halfway, if not fully out. The chances of these things breaking is always there. Just be as gentle as you can with them so you have as many as possible to put them back when you go to reinstall. The fender liner also holds in 2 more tabs holding in the slot for putting in the screws for the mud flap. So pry those out before you peel it back. And also, as you can see here, it's still connected at the bottom. So there is 1 more tab underneath here that you're going to have to remove. So now we're looking at where the mud flap joined the fender here. This is the first time I've broken these. This one is completely fine. It's not attached to the fender liner in any way, that's why. But these 2 didn't come out very well. Fortunately, I was able to salvage this square piece of it. And if I just hold this slightly into the back when I reinstall, I will be able to use the screws and have at least 2 screws holding on the mud flap. So be careful with them, but these things are plastic and old. If they break, they break. Go to the dealer and just get some new ones, or get by with using your broken pieces. The fender liner will come out with a light tug. Just when you get to the front here, remember that this portion is tucked underneath the bumper, so you're going to need to take it in this way and then pull it out. Here's a look at the fender liner so that you know what areas you need to take out. So you want to put your ratchet with the universal joint and the 14mm right there on the center. This gives you enough room to work. As you turn this, it's going to rotate. So in order to counteract it, you're going to put your crowbar inside here against this piece of metal, and it's going to hold against one of these. This really is the ideal setup. Make sure your extensions allow your ratchet to clear your crowbar that you're using, because with the universal joint, these 2 are going to be bumping into each other all the time, and it's already going to be hard to crack that loose. So make sure your ratchet clears it and doesn't bump into it. Now that you've got the 14mm bolt off, remove the clutch plate. That shim is going to be on this shaft here. Just use a magnet and take it off. If you have rust on your clutch faces here, you can sand them down and clean them off with some brake cleaner. Here's the side that we removed. As you can see, there's a lot of rust on this too. You can sand it down and clean it up with some brake cleaner. This car has only been through one winter since the AC was repaired. So this kind of goes to show that the shim is what really makes a difference. The rust is not a big deal, but still. The way I did it, put it over an oil pan, a clean oil pan. Just spray it down with brake cleaner. It's all metal. Sand it down a little bit with some 120 grit until you get the rust off, and then call it a day and put it back. When you look closer up, you can see the parts that I had sanded down before. So the clutch is making good contact there. I don't need to sand this one down again. But if you don't see any of this shiny metal stuff on yours, do some cleanup on it, as you don't want to open this up again. So just as I was about to do reinstall tips, magically a shim has jumped off of the shaft there by itself. So I would say that these cars do have two shims in there, and removing one has been perfectly fine with this car. So you can either remove two or one, but you can also know that if your AC ever stops working again, you can go back in there and pull the second one. I'm going to leave this second shim in here as it's been working perfectly fine. For reinstall, all you want to do is when you put the metal plate back, it has splines on it. You want to make sure the splines line up on the shaft, and then just use your sockets to gently put in that 14mm by hand before you go to tighten it. When you tighten it, it's going to be the same procedure with the crowbar holding onto the tabs there in order to tighten that 14mm. This can be a sloppy process, so just have patience.